What's up, family? Welcome to Creeltalk, a place where two people living out loud share insights, failures, small wins, and everything in between. Listen, no fancy studio, no professional sound bites. It's just us growing. Whether you're going through breakthroughs or breakdowns at the same time as we are, pop in those earbuds and let's grow together. Believe. Do you know that one of the very things that was put in our lives and given to us as a gift can also be the thing that stops our progress, keeps us from growing, and ultimately leads us to destroying the very kingdom of our lives? I learned this when I was actually playing a video game. There, go figure, right? I learned some of the best things in my life from video games and anime. But I was playing this video game, and the game took place at a time where it was the Greek period, right before it was kingdoms. And there was this king who, at the time, all these kings, they had these appointed advisors. And the advisors would often be the ones whispering in the king's ear, meant to be there to give advice, to point in a good direction, to help the king make great decisions. But in this story that we were experiencing, this advisor wasn't exactly doing that. What the advisor was really doing was looking to rule the kingdom through the king. He had very negative intent. And because of the connection he had to the king, he was able to do just that. He led the king to making very bad decisions, and he led the king to doing things that took the kingdom downhill and started to give a bad outlook, to eventually the people of that kingdom realized that things that were happening, decisions that were being made, were not in their best interest, and they overthrew that king, completely destroyed his reign and his kingdom, all because he listened to this advisor, the very person that was put there to help him run the kingdom, is what led him to the kingdom's downfall. And here was the crazy part: this advisor's name was feelings. Feelings, the very thing put in our lives to help us, could also be the very thing that destroys us if we treat our feelings like that king did. If we treat our feelings like advisors that can steer us to no wrong, and we listen to everything they say and allow them to make every decision, what that would lead to is destroying the kingdom of our life. Here's what I think we should do. I think, like that king should have, we should fire our feelings. I think we should fire them. I think our feelings should not be in a position in our life where they make all of the decisions and they lead our life in every turn. And I've got four very distinct reasons I think we should fire our feelings. Here's the first one. Here's the first reason we should fire our feelings: because they're schizophrenic. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. There's moments I remember, actually, I was at work one day and I was doing what I do at work. I was making cold calls. And as I was making the calls, sometimes I would get somebody to answer the phone and I'd be excited and we'd have great conversation. I'd book a meeting, it'd go well. And then 3 minutes later, I get somebody answer and they tell me, not interested, don't call me again, to take me off your list. And then my feelings would go from super excited and happy in one moment to super frustrated and irritated in the next. It'd literally be a couple minutes later. Why? Because feelings are schizophrenic. That's the first reason we should fire them. Your feelings should not be making important decisions to rule over the kingdom of anything, especially our lives. That's the first reason. Here's the second reason we should fire our feelings: because our feelings are unfaithful. They're not committed to us, they're committed to themselves. Our feelings care about them, not us. Just imagine having somebody who was unfaithful to you in the kingdom of your life and helping you create great, that was also more interested in themselves than you. And if they had to make a decision at any given moment, what's best for me will always be what's best, period. And that's how they made decisions. I'd fire that person. That person cannot be making decisions unfaithfully. Here's the third reasons you should fire your feelings: is because your feelings don't care about consequences. You see, that advisor in that kingdom, the advisor didn't have to live with the consequences of the decision he was advising the king to make. That's why he didn't care. It's, hey, does this decision, is it in the best interest of me? And if it is, I don't care about the overall consequences, especially with the specific consequences that feelings don't care about, the long-term consequences. Feelings are all about the moment. That advisor made decisions all about the moment. He didn't look at, like a good advisor should, the long-term ramifications of those decisions. He looked at what's good for me in this moment right now. And that's how he advised the king to make decisions. That's how our feelings advise us to make decisions. I remember I was in an argument with my wife, and these feelings came up, right? And these feelings often, I don't know if you feel this, if you've ever been in a scenario where you're arguing with somebody that you love, but in a moment you're unhappy with, and those feelings make you want to make the bad decision of saying something mean, saying something nasty, saying something just to hurt the other person, but not thinking about the long-term consequences of saying that thing. When that moment happened, luckily for me, I understand that words like toothpaste in a bottle, once come out, can't go back in. And the damage is done. And now I have to live with the long-term consequences of making the decision to act on the advice of my feelings in that moment. So I didn't say what I wanted to say. To long story short, neither should you. Because if your feelings in any given moment makes the decision for you and the decision doesn't take into account the long-term consequences, that decision 9 times out of 10 probably isn't a good decision. That leads to the fourth reason that you should fire your feelings from the advisory role they play in your life. And that's because the constant bad decision making that they take you down perpetuates a habit of just making bad decisions till eventually making bad decisions becomes what you're known for. Kind of like the king in that story. The people didn't overthrow him the first time he made a bad decision. People don't judge us the first time we make a mistake or do something that's uncharacteristic or unruly. It's when we get in a habit of doing it and it becomes part of who we are, because that's what habits are. Habits determine who we are, right? We are defined not by what we do, but what we do consistently. It's that habit of making bad decisions that our feeling leads us to that eventually destroys our kingdom, gets us overthrown, creates a life that's not positive, that's not exciting. That's why here's what I believe: feelings, they are great indicators, but terrible decision makers, which is why you should fire them from the advisory role they attempt to play in your life. They should not be making the decisions. They should just be making some indications. It's always good to explore feeling, but it's never good to just blindly act on a feeling. No, that's not how successful people do it. People that want to create a great and positive life, what I've adopted in my life is I don't feel my way to action, act my way to feelings. I remember I was actually watching one of my favorite animes in the world. It's probably the best American made anime ever. And my favorite character in that anime, he helped me through his philosophy understand exactly what feelings and emotions were. Up to that point, I just felt them. And I feel like that's where a lot of people are. It's just we feel those things, but we don't understand what they are and how to use them properly in our life to better our life, how to take control of those feelings. I just gave you the first step. The first way you properly use feelings to do good in your life is you fire them from the decision making role that most people allow them to live in. Fire them from being the advisors of your life. Understand what they are. You know, this anime character, he described emotions. And I thought this was just so brilliant. He described emotions as energy in motion. If you understand the law of conservation of energy, then you know that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be, you got it, transferred. But you see, when That energy in motion is transferred into us as people. It takes the form of feelings. Understand, what is a feeling? A feeling is the state of a person in any given moment. It can be your sentiments, it can be your passions, right? It's the state of a person in any moment based on the feeling that was instilled in that person. And so, understanding that, what I loved about this character is he described the ability to be emotionally stable. What did that mean? It meant to harness energy properly, being the ability to, once energy is transferred into us, to then be able to change that energy, change those feelings into what we want them to be, not what they currently are, before we transfer them elsewhere. So think about this, visually speaking. Just imagine, right? Let's go back to that example of maybe being in an argument or something sad happens. Or a great example is, as I was growing up, oftentimes people would always tell me that I was too nice, that I was too optimistic, that I was naively positive. And I would receive those words, and I could have received those words from the state in which they were given to me, the emotion that flowed being meant to be negative, meant to put me down, meant to paint a picture of not positive. But as when I would receive that energy, those words, I would then transform those words into something positive. I would transform that into a reason I wanted to be optimistic, a reason that positivity is a good thing. And you know what? That wasn't a critique, that was a compliment. I would turn it to something positive before I transferred it somewhere else or even gave it back. So that's what strong people do. You see, when you put emotions in their proper place, that energy in motion, what happens is you are able to transform your feelings. Take the indicator that the feeling gave you and turn it into something positive, turn it into something productive, transform it before you transfer it. That's how we then have strong control of our emotions, and we become described as emotionally stable, which that's the state you want to be in if you want to live an incredible life, if you want to do good and have positive and really be able to consistently experience joy. A person that is emotionally stable, they're a person that it doesn't matter what happens to them, they change the perspective, because perspective affects performance, to it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. And in everything, and especially adversity, there's a seed of equal or greater benefit if I have the ability to transform the energy, the emotion into something positive and productive before I transfer it onto the next thing. I would advise you, for somebody who's really interested in this topic, if you're looking to grow your emotional state and take full control, become a known as a person that is emotionally stable, you should visit our website, visioninspired.com, and keep an eye on it, because we're going to be coming out with a course teaching everybody how to become just an emotionally stable person that is known to take that state, those feelings, and use it for positive and productive things, to truly own the emotional side of your life. And so here's my advice. Here's the conversation we just had. Here's the talk we just had. I advise you to fire your feelings. No longer allow them to be an advisor and a decision maker in your life. Put them in the proper place and use your ability to transform them to something positive and productive before you transfer them into the world and to other people. Believe.